Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Expanded Fandomverse podcast. The Expanded Fandomverse, the only Star Wars podcast about you, the Star Wars fan. Hello, my name is Tim McMahon, and I am joined this week and each and every week by my co-host, Jason Collier. Hello, Jason.
You haven't fired me yet, so I'll still be here. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, man. This is fun. We're episode 3, but really episode 2. It's just almost as confusing as trying to tell people how to watch the Star Wars movies.
Exactly. There's going to be a machete order to our podcast sometime in the future.
And don't forget the prequels that just have Tim.
Oh yes, yes. Those maybe are best forgotten, sort of like the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Ooh, I think we're a little bit better than them.
Okay. Yes, so I haven't fired you, but I haven't paid you yet either, because there's this is all for the passion of Star Wars. There's no money involved.
The check's not in the mail? But I gotta call my agent after this. What's up with that? No, it is. It's for the love. Yeah, it's right. I mean, this is. I thoroughly enjoy doing this. This is a great way for me to get my Star Wars out. You know, everybody has their Star Wars build up over time, and they need a release and outlet for it. And this is mine. So I've really been enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, great. I appreciate you being on. I started this show because I ran out of people in my own personal life to talk to Star Wars about. I'd heard all their stories, they'd heard all mine, knew their opinions, they knew mine, so I had to start reaching out to new and interestinger people. More interesting people. No, not that my friends aren't interesting, they're just, like I said, we knew each other too well, so started this little program and here we go. Can't believe we've come so far.
Well, it's fun to find people that have the same passion you do, and you can't get into heavy, deep conversations with random friends and acquaintances about Star Wars as you can with really hardcore fans, and that's, I think, really what the podcast is about. Is we can talk nerd to each other and we understand it, and we don't feel weird. Sometimes I feel weird about talking to people about stuff because I don't really know their background. I don't know how much of a fan they are, but in this realm of the podcast, we're all huge fans, so we all kind of understand each other a little bit better.
Yeah, I've noticed the world has come around. Back when we were growing up, this sort of stuff was, you almost had to be in the closet with your nerddom, but it's now more accepted. But like you said, it does help having the right audience and the right partner in conversation. So. And actually, we'll touch on that in our conversation today with our guests. You want to tell the people all about our guests coming up later?
Sure, yeah. We have a good friend of mine back from my old days of the Star Wars Alabama Syndicate, the Alabama Star Wars Syndicate, Dana Melton and her friend, Jess Alexander. They were friends of mine from the local group we had here in Alabama, Star Wars Fan Club group, and they've gone to LA and they're big time authors now, but they got their start writing Star Wars fan fiction and role-playing games and stuff, which is kind of fun. So it just shows you where Star Wars fandom can take you. So we're going to have a really interesting conversation. If you're into any of the young adult books, young adult novels, they've written a series. If you're into that, it's really cool because you're going to get a little bit of behind the scenes about how writing takes place, and then also the fact that they're Star Wars fans. You can see how Star Wars has kind of influenced them, and you'll be able to also hear about how you can read their books and get involved with that bit part of fandom.
Great.
Did that make any sense?
It did. I understand it, and we'll get more about them later in the show. But first, let's do the news. You ready?
I'm ready.
So, let's see what's in the news this week as it relates to Star Wars fandom. Hey, Jason, you've read some EU literature before, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. In the beginning of the books, they always list the timeline. It says this book takes place 20 years after the Battle of Yavin, or this book takes place 150 years before the Battle of Yavin. You know that timeline I'm talking about?
Yeah, it took me a little while to realize what ABOU why. What I was like, what? But I was like, that's not any of the Star Wars, movie titles. And then I figured out, oh, it's the Battle of Yavin. Everything's centered around the Battle of Yavin. So I got
Yeah.
that. I got that point. Yeah.
So that made sense, I think, from a real world perspective, because Star Wars: A New Hope was the first film, and that was our marker. That was our jump into this universe, our first steps into this universe. So all the fiction that has been written has been on a timeline based around that film, or as they call it, the Battle of Yavin. Well, recently, Leland Chee, the keeper of the holocron, he works for Lucasfilm, and he's their king of continuity. He sent out a tweet on August 3rd that said, you ready? It's almost like code. 0, 10, 10-13, 13, 27, 32, 35, 26. It's kind of like the numbers from Lost. and then he sent out another tweet moments later that said 1, 2, CW, 3, R, 4, 5, 6. Now, when you may not make sense what I'm saying out loud, but what he's doing is he's linking up episode 1 as year 0. Episode 2 is year 10. Clone Wars is year 10 to 13, and so on and so on. So, this was their way of announcing a change to the Star Wars calendar, if you will. So no more will things be based around the Battle of Yavin. It'll be based around episode 1. The first film, that's year 0. We're starting there. Or so everyone thought for about a week. There was a lot of online confusion and outcry amongst the fans, and fans have power. People didn't like it. Like, no, we've been using this timeline for 30 years now in the expanded universe. Even though the EU is going away, let's keep the timeline, the fans said. So, Chee tweeted out on August 7th, yes, we're still using the timelines that mark episode 4 as year 0. So, what do you think about this change, and what do you think about the feedback they got and how it affected them changing back the change?
Well, it's interesting because if you think about the fan uproar was enough to change this, you'd think that they do listen to the fans, but then there's been tons of fan uproar about basically expunging the whole expanded universe. So, to me, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if they are creating a new universe in a sense and getting rid of the expanded universe, then why not change it? It's not like any of these old expanded universe novels are going to fit into the timeline anyway. And right now there's very little in the timeline, so they could have reset it. To me, it doesn't really matter. I liked it as episode 4 being year 0, or the beginning of the timeline or the middle of the timeline. I'm not a big. I guess Tim, you're probably the better person to answer this question. You're the book worm here at the expanded Fandomverse podcast. What's your thoughts on it? Because I'm a movie guy, so there's only 6 things as far as I'm concerned I have to deal with, and almost there'll be a 7th one coming up next year. What do you think?
Well, the logic of the change made sense in the real world. First film, that's year 0. Start from there. In universe logic, it didn't make sense. Calendars are usually based around something epic that happened in history. A modern calendar was originally based around the approximate birth of Christ. So, year 0, and as the Phantom Menace, nothing really epic happened in that film. Whereas you could say the Battle of Yavin was a turning point, the beginning of the downfall of the Galactic Empire. So that would make sense as a spot to change the calendar. However, if you want to look at the big picture of the EU, the Galactic Empire that we know from the films was really short-lived. It was 20, 30 years tops. Whereas there have been other galactic empires, the Sith Empire and the Old Republic, that lasted for thousands of years. So why would they use a calendar based around this one little historical blip and not something more profound? So, or maybe I'm just being nerdy there.
I think you're being nerdy.
Yes. Don't know if it really answers your question, but that was the thought I had. And I think we've given it too much thought. So let's move on to the next bit of news.
Well, on the Disney parks front, Disney CEO Bob Iger said during an earnings meeting that they are developing a designs for a far greater Star Wars experience in the parks, and I'm really excited about that. Is because as long as I've been a Star Wars fan as a small kid, I've wanted to have a Star Wars theme park, and now I think it's going to actually happen. What do you think, Tim?
I hope so. Yeah, they're not releasing details about the expansion until next year, but already rumors are going around that it's going to be Star Wars Land, if you will. I don't know if it's going to be at all Disney parks, from what I've read, but I'm thinking of the big Orlando park in Florida. The whole what used to be called MGM Studios, is it just called Disney Studios now? I don't remember, but the area of that's separate from the Magic Kingdom where Star Tours is. The rumor is that's going to be all Star Wars. It's
Awesome.
so I look forward to it. What would you like to see in a Disney Star Wars theme park? What kind of attractions would you hope for?
Golly, somebody put out I think it was during Star Wars Celebration 4 or 5. One of the artists put out a sketch of what a Star Wars theme park would look like. We need to find that and put that up on the website because it was really cool. And it was basically like an Epcot in a sense where it had the different lands of Star Wars. So you could be in Tatooine at the Jawa trader area, and then you could go over to the swamps of Dagobah, and just within a small walk. And I think that would be a really cool way to do it. Have the different um, areas, different lands, different planets as a small, and within each planet maybe have a small attraction like in the Dagobah, maybe that's where you'll have your stage with your Jedi training, and you'll have like a little puppet Yoda that'll, tell you how to work a lightsaber. And then if you have in the Tatooine section, they have to have a Star Wars themed restaurant, a cantina. And they have to have something like that. And then, golly, with the new movies coming out, we're gonna have more planets, and they could expand it from here on out. So I think it's really, whereas they did this in Universal Studios for Harry Potter. They have the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and I'm not a big Harry Potter fan, so I don't really have a reason to go there. But from what I understand, they've done it really well there, and the fact that there's no more Harry Potter books, so it's kind of like an infinite. I mean, sorry, it's a finite universe. There's really not going to be anything else happening with Harry Potter, but with Star Wars having 5 movies coming out in the next 5 years, this thing could just really blow up and be just a huge thing in the parks. And it's not something that in 10 or 15 years people can be tired of, because Star Wars is still going to be around.
Right.
Whereas Harry Potter, I don't know if there's going to be a future there or not.
Yeah. I hope to see. I just want 2 things. I want a Mos Eisley Cantina I can go and have a drink in, and I want a life-size recreation of the Millennium Falcon. Doesn't have to be a ride. I just want to walk up that ramp, walk into that little room with the chessboard, turn the corner, and go down to the cockpit. I don't care if I had to pay triple ticket price just for that experience. That's what I want.
And I think as far as the fan, they could just basically not have any rides and just create scale sets,
Exactly.
and I'd be a happy guy right there just with that.
Yeah.
But I think it would be really neat if in the cantina you have, and they did this at the Star Trek experience in Las Vegas. They had a Quarks bar there, and you were actually served by a Ferengi, and you had Cardassians walking by and Klingons walking by, and Disney does stuff so well that if they do a cantina, like I want to be able to sit down and be eating my meal and having my drink, and Greedo sit down next to me, and then there'd be like a Han Solo smuggler guy, and then having like a little fight right there, and like shoot Greedo, and Greedo falls down. That would be amazing. That'd be fun.
So let's see what else is going on in the news. Oh yeah, have you seen the little Twitter war, for lack of a better term, going on between Episode 7 and Superman versus Batman?
I did. I think it's cute. I think it's a funny way to keep track of these 2 big productions that are going on right now in England and Hollywood. And who started it? Because I've seen several different things that I think the Superman folks started it, right?
Yes, it came from Zack Snyder, the director of Superman versus Batman, and it was a photo of Henry Cavill, the guy who plays Superman now. It was he had his Superman logo on his chest, but he's wearing a black robe and holding a red lightsaber. It was a pretty cool picture. So, episode 7 team tweeted back a picture of John Bogoya dressed as Batman holding Han Solo's blaster, which I thought was cool because is that a confirmation that Han Solo will have the same classic blaster from the original trilogy? I hope so. Anyway, back to Soups versus Bats. They posted a picture of Ben Affleck as Batman walking along. It looked like
Tatooine, right?
It looked like Tatooine, yeah. And it's him as Batman with R2-D2, who they were calling R2-BIN, like as in Robin. So that was cool. And then finally this week, episode 7 came back with a picture of 3PO overlooking Gotham. He's got a black cape flowing, and you see the Rebel insignia coming out of the bat signal.
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet. Oh, I didn't.
Oh, yeah, it just came out a couple days ago.
Okay, there's a fourth one. Cool.
It was just kind of odd to see 3PO, and he's in an action pose. He's not posed like you always see 3PO. He looks like he's Batman on a ledge overlooking the city. It was just bizarre, but funny as heck.
It's interesting that this has happened right now because in some other news, the Superman versus Batman was up against the Captain America 3 movie. They were going to go head to head, and everybody in the industry was saying, well, somebody's going to balk because those two movies can't open the same day. It's the same audience, and it'd just be too much. And so with Marvel doing so good right now with Guardians of the Galaxy and, of course, ramping up for Avengers, Superman versus Batman is the movie that balked, and they moved their release date back to March. So I'm wondering if this is a little something that they're doing to try to gain a little bit of goodwill with the fans, or if they're just trying to use this to gain some publicity because, everybody's pumped about the Superman versus Batman movie, but there's a lot of skepticism with Ben Affleck, and Man of Steel did pretty good numbers, but the fact is, I think there's a lot of skepticism about whether or not Warner Brothers is going to be able to fly with this concept that Marvel's done so well with. So any type of, I think they're maybe grabbing onto the coattails of Star Wars a little bit and saying, hey, look at us, we're making a movie over here too. And so, and I may be totally wrong, but that's what I'm reading from this. But I think it's fun. I think it's great for the fans. Just the way that JJ's just the way that JJ has come on and done a few of these little videos for the charity giveaway, and also he's had a few little kind of snippets with his little notes where he handwrites stuff and puts them on the set. I think it's a really cool way of doing some preliminary advertising, getting some kind of buzz going about the movie. So, kudos to the Batman, Superman people for for riding on our coattails a little bit for this.
Well, if you remember back some of the early rumors about who would direct episode 7, Zack Snyder's name was in the running. I also remember hearing a rumor that he would do one of the standalone films. Particularly, there was going to be a retelling of Seven Samurai, but with Jedi, that he was going to direct. That was a rumor for a while. So there is a connection between him and Star Wars. So, but yeah.
Well, speaking of films and Star Wars films, the Fan Film Awards are back at StarWars.com. They haven't been there for the last 3 years, I guess, during the big Disney Lucasfilm acquisition, whatnot. They kind of didn't do the Fan Film Awards for a while, but they're back, and then they're going to have the Best in Show at next year's Star Wars Celebration. That's going to be in Anaheim, and I love fan films, frankly, and I think that's a really great outlet, and so I'm happy to see them back. And with the way technology's gotten, and so much stuff you can do, there's some fan films out there that rival the films actually Hollywood's producing.
I agree. Yeah, I was happy to see fan films back because when Star Wars did sell to Disney, that was a fear I remember reading online. Is previously Lucasfilm had always been so great and so open with the fans, saying, yes, use our intellectual property, use our characters, our sound effects, use our music, do whatever you want. As long as you're not making a buck, we don't care. And when Disney bought, people were like, uh-oh, Disney's a giant corporation. They might be a little litigious. They might, cut down on this sort of thing. But it looks like no, they're going to keep going with this great Star Wars fan film tradition. And so thank you to Disney for that.
What's your favorite fan film, Tim? Do you have one?
Oh, you got to go back to Troops, the original. I know there were other fan films before that, but Troops was the first one that I saw that made me go, wow, this is high quality. I was amazed that there were people out there with stormtrooper costumes. The special effects, especially for the time, were great. It was funny. So yeah, Troops is going to be the number one of all time in my book. How about you?
Well, there's a little ditty called "A Day in the Life of the Ultimate Star Wars Fan" that
yes.
it holds a soft place in my heart. But of course, that was
I forget who was behind that project.
The Ultimate Star Wars Fan, of course. No, I joke, and I don't consider that a Star Wars fan film. That was just.
It was great though. It was very enjoyable.
That. It was something fun I did, and it got me somewhere, and so I'm excited and happy that happened to me. But I tell you, I love Troops. I was able to actually be on a panel with Kevin Rubio, the creator of Troops, and we got to talk about the movie, which is really cool. So I love Troops, and then there's another one called Broken Allegiance, which is really good. It deals with kind of two Sith apprentices that break away. Very similar type storyline to The Force Unleashed, but really high production values and just really cool stuff. These guys really do amazing stuff. I've always contemplated doing one. I'm in the TV film business and stuff, but just the logistics of putting something together that big, just wow, it blows me away. But kudos to all those guys out there who do that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Fan Film Awards give us this year.
Hey, Jason, you said you've thought about doing one. I think you should. You know why? Josh Trank has been chosen to direct one of the standalone films, and he actually started off with a Star Wars fan film. He did a little one called Leia's 21st Birthday. Like Troops, it's an homage to Cops, but it was all shot at a party, pretty much on a cell phone, where it's Leia's 21st birthday and people are drinking. They get a little rowdy, and of course, someone pulls out a lightsaber, gets in a fight, and they call the cops, and the cops show up, and of course, it's stormtroopers. So, yeah, make a Star Wars fan film now. It's your chance to get into the big time.
Episode 13, here I come.
Exactly. So that's it for news this week. There's a lot more news out there than just these 4 stories, but we like to report on the things that we find fandom is talking about the most. And so that's our news for this week, but there's more news next week.
Yeah, and if there's something that you come across on the internet, I know a lot of people are on tons of different Star Wars websites and message boards. If there's something cool that you see that you think that we could cover here in our news section, post it to our Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook, the Expanded Fandomverse Podcast. Just look us up. And if there is something that you do find and you want to post it to our Facebook page, there's a chance that you can win a valuable prize. But stay tuned, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
All right. Coming up next, we have our interview with Jess Alexander and Dana Melton. Together, they are writing partners who go under the pen name of Kirby Howell. Jason told you a little bit about them earlier, so let's just jump right into it.
You like me because I'm a scoundrel. There aren't enough scoundrels in your life.
I happen to like nice men.
You're trembling.
I'm not trembling.
We have with us today a pair of friends, old college buddies, whose love of Star Wars fan fiction and role-playing games brought them together as writers and collaborators. Today, they are published authors who have penned a series of young adult novels known as the Autumn series. The book deals with a plague of epic proportions, leaving less than 1% of the world's population immune. Among the living is Autumn Winters, the teenage daughter of a famous actress. When Autumn's parents don't come home and the city is overtaken by a dangerous faction, she goes into hiding with a small group of underground survivors. She's led by a mysterious young man who harbors an unearthly secret. Dun dun dun. I love apocalyptic stories. I can't wait to read this. I apologize I didn't read it before our interview. I promise I will get to it this week.
It's okay. You're really a 13-year-old girl in our target demographic. So.
Well, I have a 14-year-old daughter, so I'll pass it on to her when I'm done. It'll be great.
Well, when she reads it, let her know we're happy to send her bookmarks and little swag since we know Papa.
Sweet. I appreciate that. We'll get more into your books in a few minutes, but because the show is Star Wars based, we want to start out by asking you what we ask all our guests for their first question. What's your Star Wars backstory? How did you first see the films? How did you become a fan? You know, your origin story as a Star Wars nerd. Go ahead.
Do you mind if I feel this?
Go for
Jess?
it. Go
okay.
first.
I'm Jessica's awfully nerdy, but there are very few women in the world that come to my level of nerdiness. Jason will attest to this. So my first, I distinctly remember my first Star Wars experience. It was 1983. I was almost 3 years old, and my dad came home with a Betamax machine and his first beta tape, and he paid $100 to get the first Star Wars A New Hope. And at the time, I was so little, and, you know, this is back in the day when people didn't have, you know, VHSs and stuff like that, so you couldn't just rewatch your favorite movie over and over and over. And, you know, it was only on TV so much. So I had not seen it yet. Also, I was pretty young. So I remember him telling me how much I was going to love this movie. And he spent, you know, half an hour hooking it all up. My mom made a big dinner. It was really exciting. It was like the introduction of Star Wars to the baby. And I remember curling up on their big king-size bed in the middle, my dad throwing his arms around me and hitting play. And I can still remember, like, kind of the electricity in the air. He was so excited about it. Because he's a computer scientist, so he was, like, good nerd himself. And I was terrified of the opening scene where Vader comes in. And he's like, it's okay, I got you. It's going to get so good. And I was scared. And then it got awesome. And I don't remember, like, seeing the rest of it. Just that opening scene, like the spaceship coming in, you know, Tantive 4, and then, you know, oh my God, I just remember, like, the majesty of it, because movies didn't look like that back then. So, anyways, clearly that became the whole family's favorite beta tape. We wore it out within the course of, I think, 2 years before I was 6. We replaced it 2 or 3 years later with a VHS, and then a few years later after that with a Laserdisc, and then a few years later with, you know, all the different widescreen versions, and then the special editions, and then the DVDs, and now the Blu-rays, me and my husband. So, yeah, from that point on, I was Star Wars everything. I had Star Wars sheets. I wanted Star Wars coloring books. I had the learn how to read books. I was completely immersed from that point.
Tell them what street you lived on.
Oh, and but ironically, I grew up on Star Trek Lane.
Oh, no.
In Birmingham, Alabama. So people would always ask me when I would give them my address, oh, are you a Trekkie? I'm like, no. I like Star Wars. And as a little girl, I was very adamant about it. As I got older, I'm like, yeah, I like Star Trek, but really I like Star Wars. But when I was like 4, I'm like, no, we're not going to talk about Star Trek. Well, we're going to talk about Star Wars. And people used to give me Star Trek gifts on accident because they knew I was a huge Star Wars fan as a little girl, and then would give me, like, an Enterprise D. I'm like, no, this is not Millennium Falcon. It's not even an X-Wing. Come on.
So Jess, how about you? What's your story?
Well, I had definitely grown up with the movies. My mom is a big sci-fi fantasy nerd, and so growing up with her as my mom, you know, reading those types of books and watching those types of movies was always part of my childhood. And but I never really, it wasn't just focused on Star Wars. It was a whole wide range of things. And but when I got to college and met Dana, I was definitely familiar with Star Wars, but I didn't really share the
fanaticism.
Her fanaticism. And when she started talking to me about this Star Wars fan club that she was working on for for the whole state of Alabama, you know, I was interested, and and that's kind of where my love of it started, was because I started hanging out with all these people and started realizing the depth of the universe, I guess, and it really kind of opened up a whole new
Side of geekdom.
Yeah, it really did, and it was fun, and it was really exciting, and that really hasn't gone away from me.
Well, I guess now being a nerd, a female nerd, is very popular, and people do it.
I'm
I guess.
so jealous of the younger generation. I cannot tell you.
Well, see, so it seems like Jess, you kind of came into it a little bit later, but Dana, you grew up with being the girl who liked Star Wars, and what kind of trials and tribulations did that face being a young girl who actually liked the stuff that boys liked?
Well, let's be clear that Geek was not Chic, and from 1980 to 2000, especially for young girls. Let's be very clear about that. You had to be okay standing out in the pack, but for me, I liked being a little different. It didn't bother me. I actually kind of liked having different hobbies and different interests and reading different books. And if anything, I became the girl that was really cool to all the guys. So I had my girlfriends that we, were on, cheerleading together and things like that. But at the same time, I could easily slip into a group of all guys and geek out, because a lot of guys at the time, even if they weren't as into it as I was, they still had a vested interest in Star Wars, Star Trek, those types of genres. So if anything, it gave me a similar vocabulary in which to interact with everyone. So I found it actually helped me be really well-rounded, even to this day, because my day job is working in TV, and it's still a predominantly male industry. But my generation and the generation about 10 years older than me, most of the people out here saw Star Wars as a kid and decided to make that their career when they went to film school, as I did. That's why I went to film school. I loved I saw Making of Return of the Jedi in 1984 and thought, oh, I'll do that. So we now have all of that in common. So if anything, it's only helped me. Anytime it would have hindered me, it was so minimal, and I didn't care. Having said that, I do kind of envy the younger generation now, because Geek is Chic now. You can be a girl into cosplay. You can be a girl into Sailor Moon. You can be a girl into Star Wars, and that's super cool. When I was I think I was 11 when I made my first website, and it was a Star Wars website. All the boys thought it was cool. The girls thought it was a little weird. I didn't care. And then, my local library saw it, and then I made the local library's website, so it gave me a little side job. So Star Wars has always kind of helped me, has always opened up doors to me. It opened up with what I want to do professionally, and then it's just given me the vocabulary to really flourish out here.
Now, you mentioned how Star Wars influenced your career path. How has it influenced your writing? For example, you have a strong female hero in your book. Is she, would you say she's a Leia type, or is she more of a Luke type? If you had to connect her to a Star Wars character, where would you go? Who would you say she's most like?
If I were to say she was most likely, it would be Jaina Solo. I grew up.
But she doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, Jason, don't do that.
So I think, Splinter of the Mind's Eye was the first Star Wars book, and then there was a long dry period, and then the Heir to the Empire series came out by the amazing Timothy Zahn, and my parents got me that series right after the trilogy completed, and that's when Lucasfilm started realizing that they could have this whole side business of issuing Star Wars books as long as they got really amazing authors and kept up the quality. So I started reading it then, and I always identified with Jaina Solo. She was spunky and young, and she was an X-Wing fighter pilot in squadrons that were completely male dominated, and I identified with her so much because I was the only girl on the basketball team in high school. And junior high and elementary. I was the only girl on the soccer team, and then the baseball team. I did cheerleading and other things on the side, but I was always the only girl. I was the only girl in karate when I was at elementary. Me and my dad did it, and I always found myself in situations where I was isolated and that I was the only female. And when I started reading the books with Jaina Solo, she used that as a way to stand out, but then she decided that she had to be better than the rest, and she really pushed herself to excel and become, Styx, because she she did the X-Wing with, the sticks instead of a yoke in it. So then when I got my first car, I got a manual transmission because I wanted to have my own stick, so to speak. I wanted to make it a little difficult. So when we were writing Autumn, at least for me, I really honed in on the Jaina Solo type. She's strong, she's plucky, she's smart. Now, with Jaina, she comes of age in the book, so you go through the coming of age bit that Autumn does. And you also with her when she first falls in love in the New Jedi Order when she meets Jagged Fell, which, I'm sure there's some parallel there. Maybe that was, unconscious. But, there are a lot of things about Jaina Solo that translate. And because of that, some things of Leia and Han, because, they were her parents and a lot of their values were instilled on her, and they never held her back because she was female. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Now, what other characters or themes from your novels have the genesis from Star Wars, or maybe your love of fandom, or any other sci-fi that has influenced these characters, or maybe plot, or anything else in these books that you're writing now?
Well, there's definitely a correlation between the rebellion and what the underground survivors go through. In our first Autumn series, and Jessica, you can talk a little more about this, so I'm not completely dominating, but the front is kind of like this omnipresence that controls everything, and they convince people that it's for the greater good, and they're getting people to kind of spread their numbers, and they're taking over. But the main guy, the emperor figure, if you will, his goals are not altruistic. He wants to rule, which is very much like Palpatine. And then Autumn and her group, the group in hiding, the people who rebel against them, very much have that mentality of Luke, Leia, and our core characters who know that this isn't right. People are being oppressed, and they do their best to get out of that situation while making sure that their new mock family is safe. Because that's the thing. After the apocalypse, we're very interested in the theme of the survivors become your new family. Once real families dissolve, new ones begin. And I think that's very true in the Star Wars universe, because before Han and Leia marry in the book series, that it's still canon to me, FYI. They're not, well, I guess Luke and Leia are family, but you don't know that in the beginning. So the bonds you make, those are your new family ties. So we definitely have that theme.
Yeah, I think there's also a little bit of a theme of a reluctant leader, where maybe not so much in Star Wars, but, people are sort of thrust into positions in, where they, no one else really wants to take the lead, and they see a need that they need to, that it's needed, and they end up doing it. Like our main character, Autumn, she's sort of continually thrust into being, in a leadership position, and she doesn't necessarily, want that, but she knows that it's the right thing to do, and she almost can't help herself by, taking on that leadership role, which I think that is, we might not have seen that so much with Leia, but she was definitely, she was doing it because it needed to be done, and being in that leadership position and being that role model to people.
Yeah, and another thing, come to think of it, I don't know if you guys know so much about our books, but we call them sci-fi light because there's definitely a sci-fi element. There's a twist in the book. You learn about the romantic heroes, his backstory, and he has certain abilities. And one of them is a direct homage to Star Wars. It's almost like a force push. So there are some nuances that we take from Star Wars, and there's some other things that are, this is what inspired us.
That seems to be a trend, I think, in a lot of fiction these days, is that there's just that touch of sci-fi, a touch of fantasy. It starts off in one genre, and then they slowly bring, once they hook you in, then they bring in the sci-fi, and they bring in the, like Lost, for example. It was just people crashed on an island, but then they brought in the elements of sci-fi afterwards.
People are more open to the magical nowadays, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's becoming more prevalent. The stories are so much richer because you can go anywhere. You can build worlds that don't exist. And years ago, that was for the niche nerd culture. But little by little, by just planting things in like that, it's opened up the door. Now, you have things like, look at Avengers. It's like the highest grossing movie ever made. And there are aliens that come in from different planets. And now that's cool. That's fun. Everyone's into it. But it was definitely intentional for us because we write strong female characters for young girls, and we write them so that their characters can be role models. You know, Autumn is a smart girl making smart decisions. She's not always just following her heart. She makes tough calls, and that's important to us. That's why we write. But because we grew up loving a certain type of tale, we knew we wanted to have some fantastical in it. So we knew it couldn't be just a hard sci-fi novel because it might alienate the target demographic that we're going after, which are coming of age girls. So that's why we coined the phrase sci-fi light, because there's a little bit there. It's just enough to kind of open your eyes, but not enough to off-put people who aren't quite ready to, jump into Heinlein or something like that.
Sounds great. Sounds like Autumn has a lot of challenges she has to go through as a character. What were some of your challenges that you two had to go through to get this book published?
Oh, Jess, take it.
Well, I mean, geez, writing with a partner, first of all, is quite different than, writing independently. And I don't necessarily see that as a challenge that we had to overcome, because we just sort of fell into writing naturally with each other. When we first started, we were doing the Star Wars fan club. What was it called? Star Wars Syndicate in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And we would write role-playing games together with a big group. And, that's really kind of where our team writing really started from. And so it really started naturally and casually. And then from there, we started writing scripts and things together. And just figuring out how we were actually going to write a novel as partners was kind of a challenge in itself. Just trying to figure out how the whole process would work. But aside from that, there was all sorts of publishing challenges, and even timeline and scheduling challenges between, when you have your own writing that you're doing, you can sneak in writing whenever you want and kind of go along your own schedule. But when there's two of you, you each have your own set of schedules and life problems that pop up and things that you have to deal with that might take you away from writing. So the challenges sort of came from all sides, but at the very core of it, the fact that we had each other to sort of depend on, that there were two of us to handle all of this stuff, it really kind of made all those challenges seem not so difficult, because there were two of us and it wasn't just us out there by ourselves doing it. But I guess to get more specific, when we were actually in the publishing process, we had first wanted to try to publish traditionally, and we wanted to query agents and, find a publisher, and we wanted to see our book in the bookstore, because that's what our childhood dream had been, was to see a book that we had written in a store. And when we signed with a publisher, it wasn't exactly what we had hoped it would be. It was kind of a lot of waiting around. It was a lot of what are we going to end up doing for them? What are they going to, reluctantly do for us? It didn't really feel like what it was supposed to be. And we knew that we would also be making a lot of sacrifices by allowing them to make all of the decisions. So in the end, we ended up splitting with the publisher and subsequently our literary agent, and ended up publishing independently, which was probably one of the hardest decisions we've ever had to make. But I don't think either of us have regretted it for a single second since we've made that decision. And, just publishing independently has allowed us to make all the decisions ourselves. And while it has created a whole host of other challenges, learning how to do marketing, learning how to code the manuscript for Kindle, learning how to format the book for paperback release, learning how to get the ISBN numbers and the barcodes and all that stuff. I mean, it's a lot of stuff to learn. And so those were a ton of challenges. But like I said, there were two of us, and we were able to sort of divide and conquer, and what one couldn't figure out, the other one usually was able to do.
Can I ask you to take a step back? I'm fascinated with the nitty gritty. So what is your writing process when there's two people? Is it, I know every pair of writers has their own different style. What's your style? Is it one takes a first pass, the other one does a second draft, or how do you work it out? I'm just curious.
Well, what we do, we always start with our blue sky days. And what that is just we throw a bunch of ideas against the wall and see what sticks. And once we have kind of that seed, that core to build upon, we spend weeks, sometimes months, sometimes even a year or so, really breaking the story. And we start breaking plot, working on character background. And that's just a lot of meeting. For the last 13, 14 years, maybe we've met, every Sunday and worked a full day, and then we meet Wednesday night, and then we take away our, quote unquote homework, and to keep each other honest, we bring back to the next time we meet. So a lot of times when we actually meet, we're just breaking story, and then over time we start developing that into an outline together. Now we work with a pretty cohesive outline because, and I mean this metaphorically, of course, it's important to be on the same page. Literally, that would be difficult, but metaphorically, it works quite well for partnerships, because then once we have this outline and we know we leave some room for the magic to happen during the writing process, but it's, the chapter starts here, this needs to be accomplished, make sure to drop in this to foreshadow this, make sure to drop in that, and here's your cliffhanger for the chapter. Once we have kind of that broken down for each chapter, we'll start assigning chapters. And sometimes we'll do it by scene if they're too big tentpole moments in a chapter, but usually it's a chapter at a time. And the way Jessica and I are, even though our writing voices have melded pretty much completely because we've been writing together so long, what the scenes that call to us to actually write the first draft are usually very different. We both have different skill sets in that regard. So we've never actually had to fight over who gets what chapter, who gets what scene. Because generally, if it's more dialogue heavy, plot heavy, that's something I'm more interested in. If it's more scenic or romantic, or even sometimes if there's a lot of action involved where there's less dialogue and plot, that might be something Jessica is more interested in taking a first pass at. So we'll break it up by chapter, and then we'll go away and we'll write our pages. And in that time, we're in constant communication, because as you're writing it, you always find new elements, new pieces, new character moments. And when that happens, it has a trickle effect through the rest of the book. So it's important that if I find a moment for Shad that, a new thing for him to do, I need to relay that immediately to Jessica. That way she can pick it up and continue it in her chapters. Or if I find a new plot, something that I need to help plot that needs to be buffered in her sections. So yes, we do break up the chapters and we write individually at home, and or we'll meet and write sometimes if we kind of need a gym buddy. And then after that, we swap the scenes back and forth many, many, many times and rewrite each other and give notes. The first pass will generally just give notes and give the person who wrote the initial chapter a chance to, kind of correct and or just revise, because that's usually the thickest revision is the first one. And then after that, it just goes back and forth, back and forth. And then once we have a draft, we start cleaning it up and we start a beta process. We have a group of about 30, mostly women. Some of them are professional writers out here that we work with or have worked with. Some of them are proofers and copy editors. Some are just big fans of the genre who can tell us if we're stepping into anyone's turf or in anyone else's world that they've read. And then that'll go out a chapter at a time, and then we'll send a questionnaire with it. So if we have any specific concerns, they can give us feedback on that. And then we end up, by the time the beta process is done, which is chapter a week, we end up with a huge set of notes. And then in that, we're making our own notes as well. And then we go back and do a huge rewrite together. Again, we'll break it up, and then we'll pass it back and forth. And then we'll do another couple proofing passes, and then it goes to a copy editor who will give us more notes. We do the notes together. Then that goes to the proofer, we fix that, and then the publishing actually starts to happen.
We actually recently talked to a author, and he says that when he's writing, he tries to stay away from reading other materials and stuff because of the issue of plagiarism and whatnot. Now, you guys are in a genre of that has there's a lot of books in the genre right now, and it's a very popular genre. There's movies out there. How do you guys still stay kind of in the genre and figure out how to do it without letting any of these outside influences influence you?
Well, there's the rub. Actually, it can be difficult. It's really important to find your own path, and we spend a lot of time making sure that we're not playing anyone else's sandbox too deeply. There's going to be some crossover between these genres just because it's so over-flooded right now. And then there are the classics that we all grew up reading that are influences on all of us. but Jessica and I, we make sure that we can't think of anything that we've read or seen that's too similar. And then the beta process really, really helps with that.
It also helps. I mean, it's really difficult to not be influenced by what you're reading and watching while you're in the middle of writing your own stuff. But I think it's important to incorporate the inspiration and the influence that comes behind, when you watch something or read something that is really, really good and really, really affects you, because you can take that inspiration and, twist it and meld it and work with it so that it fits your story. And, so you're not exactly taking, characters or, plot threads or anything, but you can use the inspiration from really good material and use it as a springboard for your own material.
We talked a little while ago about how you were initially with a big publisher and how you went with an independent. And of course, in the Star Wars world, we have the issue now of the expanded universe, which you knew we'd get to, Dana. The big power-hungry, greedy Disney has come in and has basically expunged most of the expanded universe from our minds. Well, not from our minds, but if they could maybe come in with their Gestapos and take them off our bookshelves. But anyway,
how do you really feel, Jason? Tell us how you really feel.
I just,
I'm sorry.
But anyway, as authors, if you guys were writing for, say, the Star Wars, under the Star Wars moniker, and that happened to you guys as authors, and they said, okay, your books are no longer kind of part of the whole universe, what would your feelings be about it?
Well, here's the thing. Books live on the page and in the hearts of your readers and the minds of your readers at best. They can't take away the experience the readers had when they read them. And the books are still out there. And they're still, most of them were hugely successful books when they came out. I mean, just having the Star Wars name on a book guarantees almost it'll be a New York Times top 20 bestseller. So you've got a lot of people reading them. So whether Disney says they're canon or not, or whether they existed or not, or they're tangent, those books are out. People have read them. Those stories exist, and that you can't take that away from the authors who created them.
Well, how do you feel as a fan?
When I read it, when they announced it, I was bummed out. I've read well over 100 Star Wars books. I started reading them very young, and I guess I haven't read as many in the last 10 years, but I had a good 20 plus year span where, in the course of a year, if I read 50 books that year, 40 of them were Star Wars books, or 30. So, I was really bummed because some of the expanded universe characters became my favorite. I've already talked about Jaina Solo. There's Mara Jade, Anakin Skywalker. I just, it's a bummer. Having said that, just because they say it's not legit anymore doesn't mean I like it any less.
Are you upset that you'll never get to see some of these characters maybe appear on the big screen or in any other type of, in video games or anything else anymore?
Well, I never anticipated seeing them on the big screen, to be honest. I'll talk about the prequels a little bit. When they went back and did the prequels, that's when the magic started leaving me a little bit for the Star Wars universe, because that's when everyone was jumping on the bandwagon and suddenly loved Star Wars again, whereas it had been my thing for all the years in between when it wasn't popular. And I didn't love the prequels, and suddenly it saturated the Star Wars universe with stuff that I didn't necessarily love. And then, for a while, there wasn't necessarily imminent plans to do the next 3 movies. So I never thought that Jaina would make it to the big screen. I never thought that I'd see Mara on the big screen. So in a weird way, I actually have some optimism for the next movies, because I've worked with Disney before. They do good stuff. And I think it would be interesting to see it helmed by J.J. Abrams. I like what he's done with the Star Trek universe. And the fact that I never anticipated seeing these characters on screen. They always kind of existed in this book expanded universe. I'm okay with that. I'm absolutely okay with that. do hope to see, these characters live on in the book world, though. There's so many rich stories and rich characters that I think it would be a shame to kind of end their run because they become so important to so many people. And if one or two of them did make the big screen, that would make my day, but it's not something I'm holding my breath for.
Right now, I know there's a big fan push going online. There's groups building who are pushing for Disney and Lucasfilm to continue the Legends line, continue it as a separate alternate Star Wars universe so these characters can live on in the future with more stories. So hopefully enough fan uproar will bring that to being, because I'd like to see that. I've followed those storylines for the last 20, 30 years, and I want to see them continue going. To play devil's advocate, I have a quote here I read this week, which it's stuck with me all week, about stories being canon or not canon. And I apologize, I can't find the name of the author who wrote this, but he said, quote, "I don't see why we should be judging stories as more or less significant on any other basis but their merits. That's all canon does. It arbitrarily privileges some continuities over the others." And I agree with that. It just because someone else says it's canon or not canon doesn't mean the book is any less great. So
I agree wholeheartedly. These stories, as long as they moved me in the moment or if I connected with them in some way, I'm a happy camper. I'm in it for a good ride, for a good story. I don't care whether it's canon or not. I'll even read a good fan fiction. If it's a good fan fiction, that's great. I don't need canon.
I was recently at Comic-Con just a couple weekends ago, and I was lucky enough to get in on a panel to listen to a handful of authors, fantasy authors, talking about their work. And George R.R. Martin happened to be on that panel. And a fan asked him if he was at all, I guess, apprehensive about seeing the remaining books of the Game of Thrones series on the TV show, and was he at all worried about what the TV show might do in terms of departures? And he had a really interesting answer. He said that the books will always be the books, and the TV show, while it is the visualization of the books, the TV show is the TV show, and the books will always be the books. And to hardcore fans, the books will always be there. The TV show isn't taking anything away from them. It's just sort of adding to them, and it's up to the fans if they want to, go with that or stick with the books. So I thought that was a really, really fantastic answer to something like that.
Yeah, so we'll rip that off. Pretend we said that.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll give you credit for that. Hypothetical question. If you were asked to pen a Star Wars book, would you do it? Would you have any reservations? If so, what would they be?
I would do it in 1/100th of a heart, 1/1000th of a heartbeat. Yes. I feel like I have been preparing my entire life to write a Star Wars book. I still have the terminology down. I know the mythology. I would do it. Oh my God, yes, I would do it. My reservation would be that there's so much expanded universe continuity. And I know that there are women within Lucasfilm, now part of Disney, who police that. But if you get one thing wrong, you are burned in a court of effigy by the fans. I have actually been guilty of that once before. I remember I was reading Dark Journey, which was Jaina Solo's standalone book in the New Jedi Order. And I read that Jagged Fell's ship, he had brought his Chiss starfighter to this planet, and I remembered reading back in Ruin, which was I think the third or fourth book of the New Jedi Order series, like a year or two before that they only had slave lightspeed drives, that they didn't actually have a lightspeed drive of their own because they were smaller ships. They didn't have the room for it in their small fighters. And I remember thinking, that's crap, man. He shouldn't be able to get to this planet. And of course, I went on the boards. I'm like, what the heck? And then, we all talked about it. I was like, darn it. I love the book. There's this one little thing that bugged me. And, it was a thread. I think there was like 100 different comments on it. We talked about it. And, I'm sure in hindsight, that author probably saw and went, oh, crap. I know I would have. And then the next month in Star Wars Insider, there was a short story that actually cleaned that up and said that some of these small Chiss vessels had their own light speed drive in it.
Oh my gosh.
All thanks to you. You think
Maybe.
you think they were trolling those boards and saw that?
I have no idea. I have
Let's
no
hope.
idea.
Let's hope.
I'd like to think I have some small influence on the Star Wars universe. I probably.
Well, that's what I always loved about the EU was its ability to retcon itself. And, it could fix any mistake it ever made.
Oh yeah.
Well, if you were given the opportunity to write the perfect novel, I know all authors say they have that kind of personal novel that they always want to write. And if you've been a Star Wars fan, then you probably had something in the back of your mind of a Star Wars novel that you've always wanted to write. Give us a tease about what it would entail.
Well, it would definitely be Jaina Solo, because right now we're writing, most of our books are about coming of age girls making smart decisions. So that's a gimme. I'd like to do the first Star Wars romance novel. And I'm not talking about hot and heavy, that sort of thing, but one that is almost like the Hunger Games stuff, where there's real romance in it, but it's not necessarily a romance novel.
It's not necessarily forefront, but it definitely would be part of it.
I think that would be a nice diversion from what exists, and I think it would be fun for a lot of female fans and some others as well.
Heck, I'd read it, and I'm not a female fan. But I'd read anything with the Star Wars logo on it, so that's just the kind of nerd I am.
Solid.
So this is the part of the show where we have these speed round questions. Quick questions, and we're looking for quick answers. Are you guys ready to play the speed round?
Oh, I don't know. My Star Wars trivia has gotten really rusty over the last 10 years.
Oh, you're in luck. It's not trivia. It's all about yourself, because this show is about you, the Star Wars fan.
Excellent.
So we'd like to hear answers from both of you. We'll start off quick and easy. Which is your favorite Star Wars movie and why?
Empire Strikes Back. It's darker.
I definitely like Empire as well. I don't know. Even when I was a kid, I always enjoyed the beginning on Hoth and just the battle there. I just thought it just always captured my attention.
What is your favorite Star Wars character and why?
Leia. She's a girl.
I always loved Han. He just was so, I don't know. Yeah, him and Chewie, I just loved their interaction with each other, and I loved anytime they were in a scene. I just loved their interaction with anybody. They always made me smile, and I wanted a Chewie of my own.
See, I grew up with a dog, so I was good there. I like Leia because she would take anyone's flack. She was a girl, they got to be in charge.
Now, we've touched on role-playing games and fan fiction. What is your fandom outlet that we haven't touched upon? Something you do that's Star Warsy that we haven't talked about.
Well, Jason may have told you this, but I grew up with a massive Star Wars collection, one that rivaled his up until maybe 2003. As a matter of fact, we had at least 2 full rooms and then several storage units outside with the collection that overfloweth. So I was a big-time collector until the prequels came and kind of killed it for me.
Where are these collectibles these days? Are they still in storage?
They're in storage at my dad's.
And his address is what? Now, what kind of collectibles are we talking about? Vintage stuff?
Oh yeah, I have the very first comic. I have when the Frank Lamette issued the large pewter Millennium Falcon dipped in 24 karat gold. I have that. I had all the cardboard standouts, the original line that came out. I have original toys in the in the Vader case. We're talking the AT-AT that you put your hand in. I also had all the reissues all through the 90s and all the variations, like in the Power of the Force Kenner line in 1994. I found the Boba Fett half circles. I found the Leia with the OO on the card, where she still looked kind of like a dude.
They called her Monkey Leia.
Monkey Leia.
Yeah.
I have my mom opened one ridiculously, and then I have one Melton box still in the card.
Cool. Well, if you ever want to get rid of any of that vintage stuff, we might need to talk sometime.
All right. I haven't seen it in years. My dad's storage so long now. Maybe it needs to be a new home.
Are you sure he hasn't gotten rid of it while you've been out west?
He hasn't gotten rid of it. He used to take a lot of pleasure in helping me collect it. We would go to cons all over the Southeast. And then for his job, he traveled a lot. So he always knew, like, do you remember when the 12-inch Walmart special Biff Cantina band members came out and how hard they were to find?
I sure do.
He found all of them. And it was just because whenever he would go to a different, he used to work for hospitals doing their IT. And he would just, every time he would see a Walmart or a Target or anything like that, off the freeway, he would just stop and go in, and he had his list of things that I was looking for, and if he found them, he would buy them. And it was a lot of fun for both of us.
That is a dedicated dad.
Oh yeah.
He is an awesome dad. I think everybody wishes they had a dad like him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, continuing on. We went off on a little collecting tangent. That's me. Sorry about that. Okay, here's an interesting question. And if you listen back to some of the earlier episodes, Tim and I both shared ours. But I would like for you to share your Star Wars dirty little secret. And what this is a story about something crazy that you did in relating with Star Wars, something you did experience, something you may be a little embarrassed by, but just, as being a fan, something that's a little crazy on the wild side.
Wild? You don't know us well enough. We're not that wild. I can tell you an embarrassing moment. I don't embarrass super easy. I own my weirdness. During the Star Wars Syndicate days, I'm not a cosplayer myself, but we had a lot of people who were and who were very, very good at it. So I set up a thing with the Children's Hospital in Birmingham so that our guys could come in over at Halloween and give, play with all the Star Wars toys with the kids and leave some stuff behind and, do a little teach them how to build lightsabers and stuff like that. And then I found out the week before that we could only have 5 people in. So I was going to have 5 of our cosplayers go, but then they told me I had to be one of them. And I thought, well, crap. That means there's only going to be 4 costume people, and I was hoping to have at least 5. So I decided to learn how to sew and build a costume, and that's not really my thing. So anyways.
You did it for the children, Dana.
Yeah. I had a great Halloween costume for several years. So I put together a costume so that, we would have 5 in-costume Star Wars people coming to visit the kids. But what I didn't anticipate was that they were going to have us come back in the afternoon. So they needed us to kind of go away for lunch. And one of the guys got a great idea to go to the Galleria to get lunch at the food court. And it wasn't quite Halloween yet. It was the month, but not Halloween proper. So I walked around Hoover Galleria in, full tabards and, the full Jedi robe. And it was an interesting experience, to say the least.
I may have some pictures of that.
Oh, God. One of our friends after the fact took some of the pictures we posed for, and he actually added little lightsabers, the actual glow parts.
I've got those. Yes, those are the ones.
My one costume experience.
So that was one secret. Come on, there's 2 of you. We need 2 secrets here.
Okay. I would. Mine's kind of it's sort of embarrassing. I'm not really a crazy person. I did let Dana dress me up in her Jedi costume.
Oh, that's right.
Once, and she did take a picture, and I do have it. It does not exist anywhere else other than in the shoebox that it happens to be in right now. But that's not really the embarrassing story that I was going to tell. It's I think it was a Star Wars Syndicate thing that we did where we drove up to Huntsville for a midnight screening of, was it the second?
It was the second
prequel?
movie. They weren't going to issue it in the state in IMAX, so we worked with the Space and Rocket Center to get it
that's right.
there.
It was at the Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville.
So fans came from all over.
I think it was a midnight showing, and everyone was really excited. And I was super apprehensive because I get really bad motion sickness, and I wasn't really sure about this whole IMAX theater. And I had brought Dramamine and everything, and we filed into the theater, and this theater was crazy. I had never been in an IMAX theater quite like this before.
It's the old dome.
But it was, I felt like the seats were so dramatically stacked that the person ahead of me, their head was on a level with my knees. It was really, really severe, and the screen was right in front of our faces. And so when the lights dimmed and the scrolling started, I started trying to read, but it was almost like, it was like a 180 sweep of your head trying to read the entire thing. And I started seeing double, and I ended up watching the entire second prequel with my eyes closed, or actually just listening to it. And so that was kind of an embarrassing thing, because then, we came out and everyone was talking about it, and I was just like, yeah, I think I remember that part. Was that when someone said this, So to this day, and again, I haven't really rewatched any of the prequels just because they weren't the same to me, and as the first movies, and it was just kind of sad. So to this day, I've still only listened to the second movie.
You're probably better off. You're probably better off.
I've been told I haven't this much.
I'm sort of a defender of Attack of the Clones. It's one of my favorite of the prequels, but we'll get into that another day and why I think it's not so bad.
I remember we went to the midnight showing of that, and Jason and Paxton had gotten to a slightly earlier exclusive screen, and they came out, and the rest of us are all in line. I said, "How was it? How was it?" And then I remember, I think it was Jason that said, he stuck his hand out and goes, "I give it a sideways thumb." I was like, "Oh, crap."
Yeah. Unfortunately, that one just, well, the problem with that was the earlier show had some type of projection problem, and it was blurry. And so I still think that if I had seen it the first time and it being in focus clear, I would have liked it a little bit better. But I remember sitting there halfway through that movie going, I can't tell what's going on. And kind of had, an experience like Jess had, just kind of like, I closed my eyes for part of it because that just was, it was just a bad thing. But yeah, it's unfortunately not that great a movie. But
speaking of the prequels, here we go. Hardest question we're going to ask you today. Jar Jar, love him or hate him?
Well, it's kind of double-edged sword for me. I've met Ahmed Best. We have mutual friends. I like Ahmed Best. I don't love Jar Jar.
I would have to say that he didn't necessarily bother me much the first time I met him. He was the character in the movies. Towards the end of when we see his character, I was starting to be like, okay, all right, this is enough, I think.
He would have been cute in a scene or two, but
yeah.
The whole movie, yeah.
Okay, well, we have now I guess this will be our last question in dealing with Star Wars. Our last guest was Craig Chinnery, and he actually wrote the Star Wars A New Hope in haiku. So if you get a chance, check that out. You guys, being authors, will really enjoy that. But he had a question that he wanted to ask you guys, and here's the question.
What has been your favorite story in the expanded universe?
Heir to the Empire, that whole trilogy by Timothy Zahn, that's really the book series that got me and hooked me into the expanded universe. Had I not just happened upon that series, my parents given it to me after I saw it in the bookstore, I don't know that I would have read all of the other Star Wars books that I did. And, without those, goodness knows how my life could have ended up being very, very different because they were such huge influencers, of what I'm doing now. I write sci-fi novels now. So, yeah, had I not had that book series to kind of begin it all, I think that my life would be very, very different.
I would have to say that I completely agree with Dana. She actually, when she was introducing me to the Star Wars expanded universe, when we were getting involved in the Star Wars Syndicate, she gave me The Heir to the Empire and I think some of the books following it, and those books were fantastic. And it really was sort of the key that opened the door to that type of geekdom for me. So it was definitely an amazing experience reading those books.
Nice, thank you. So we always like to end each interview with a non-Star Wars related question. The Wayfarer series is teased on the back of your first novel as your next group of books. Can you give us a hint of what fans can expect from that series?
Well, The Wayfarer is it definitely is a little bit of a departure where Autumn deals with some sci-fi light. The Wayfarer is more fantasy, and it definitely centers around the same type of female teenage girl, and she's also thrust out on her own. But instead of there being apocalyptic reasons for it, it's more of a bad foster situation that she ends up running away from, and she ends up falling into a sort of new strange world and looking for someone that she lost. And it's a whole adventure story where she is searching for someone in this very, very unrecognizable landscape, and it's very, very fantasy. So we're really looking forward to getting to that series.
When can fans expect to see that?
We're hoping that
Don't answer that. Don't.
Well,
We won't hold you to
a little
that.
bit of a timeline because we're hoping that the third book in the Autumn series will be out before the end of the year. And then, so we're hoping sometime next year to get the first Wayfarers book out.
Cool. We will wait for it with bated breath. Okay, we have finished the question. You guys survived the question and answer period, but now it's time for guest game time. Are you ready to play a game with us?
Okay.
God.
All right, as the title explains, we're here to play a game with our guest, and we asked earlier about if you could write your own Star Wars novel, what would it be like? And since you guys have a history of working together, we're going to basically ask one of you the question, and we'll ask the next one of you a question. We're going to put together our own Star Wars book via Mad Libs. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to give us words. We'll ask for nouns, verbs, adjectives, etc. And we'll plug them into our own Mad Libs story here. And this will be your first, I guess, published Star Wars novel.
Awesome.
Okay, so we'll start with...
Sorry, George Lucas. We're so sorry.
So we'll start with Dana. Dana, give me an adjective.
An adjective? Bright.
Jess, I need a noun.
Does it need to be Star Wars related, or should we stay away from
the crazier the better?
And okay, you said a noun.
Yes.
Television set. So lame.
A television set. That's from what, 1974?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and old ones if you can. Yeah, like one of those big box ones.
Oh, what were those called?
Television sets.
No
they were
idea.
just there
was. But they were called they had a particular name. The ones that had all the wood around them and stuff.
I don't think so.
Okay, noun, Dana.
Sony Walkman.
Sony Walkman. Somebody's been watching Guardians of the Galaxy.
I have not seen it.
Oh, go see it. It's awesome.
I can't wait.
That's a thumb up, not a thumb sideways. A definite thumbs up. Okay, just noun.
Person, place, or thing.
Console is the word. Console TV is what I was thinking about earlier.
Oh, okay, yeah, that'll work.
Okay, so I'll write in
Can you
console.
change the other one?
Yeah,
Yes, I've got it.
choose the last one.
Okay.
So we still need another noun.
Yes. Look around, see if whatever
Swing set.
swing set. Okay, adjective.
Fluffy.
Fluffy. Plural noun for Jess.
All these nouns. Handbags.
Is that a handbag or a handbag?
Oh.
Handbag.
I need a plural noun.
Freeways.
I need another noun. Lots of nouns in this one.
Tractor.
Plural noun.
Apple crates.
Oh. Putting a little production spin on it.
You can see where our strengths are.
Adjective. We only have 6 more to go. What?
Orange.
I think colorful might be.
Color.
Color?
Sure, orange. I'm not sure orange really
A colorfully orange.
Color. I just meant color.
The color?
Yeah, colorful. Sure.
Plural noun.
Eyeshadow palettes.
That's good.
Adjective.
Oh no.
Hang on 1 second.
Are you getting a thesaurus?
No, sorry, my computer went to sleep.
She was logging back in her Mac.
I just wanted to make sure it didn't go
Sleepy.
out. Okay, so we're looking for an adjective.
Yes.
Sleepy. That works.
All right, give me a number.
42.
How come I was thinking of that number too? That's the same.
Because it's the answer to the life universe and everything.
Exactly.
I thought we would get 1138 for that, but it's okay. All right. Here we get into some fun stuff. Part of the body.
Thumb.
Nail.
Thumbnail.
That's us working together.
There you
Teamwork.
go. That's how the book was written right there.
Absolutely.
Caught a glimpse of it. All right, we got 2 more. We need an adjective.
Snotty.
Snotty. And finally, the last one more adjective.
Glowing.
Glowing. Okay.
God.
Are you ready? The name of the story is The Mos Eisley Spaceport.
The what?
Mos Eisley Spaceport is the name of our story. And I guess I could do this in my best Ewan McGregor or Alec Guinness impression, but I won't.
I would love that.
You will never find a more bright hive of scum and villainy than at the galaxy's most famous watering console television set, Mos Eisley, a Sony Walkman port on the remote swing set Tatooine. At this oasis in the middle of the fluffy terrain, smugglers, criminals, and all-around bad handbags from all over the galaxy come to refuel their freeways, listen to music being played by the tractor, and kick off their apple crates. And what a colorful array of creatures you'll see. Aliens with eyeshadow palettes on their heads, sleepy eyeballs, and even 42-inch long teeth. If you find yourself at Mos Eisley Spaceport, try to stay calm and don't make thumbnail contact with anyone. That's just the kind of snotty behavior that'll land you in glowing trouble. The end.
Fantastic.
All right. Well,
Bravo.
We will post that up on the webpage and attribute it to you guys.
Fantastic.
And the Mad Libs authors for the rest of it. And so hopefully Mr. Abrams or Mr. Kasdan will be rigging you guys up and say, hey, you know, there's a Star Wars Episode 8 coming out. We haven't written it yet. Would you guys like to try? So hopefully that'll be the case. And if it is, then we get to say we know you and we'll get to go and, you know, be part of it too. So that's all we have for today. We thank you guys very much for coming on the show. And Tim, you have anything to add?
No, appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. You want to tell people where they can find you online?
Yeah, on Twitter, we're at Kirby Howell, but we're most active on our Facebook fan page, which is Kirby Howell.
And tell us where everybody can find the books.
We can find them just about anywhere. I mean, most people just order them from Amazon. If you're into Kindle, you can get them on the Kindle download. The physical books, you could order it, you know, Barnes & Noble or Books A Million or Amazon. It's wherever you like to buy your books.
Sweet. I'm definitely going to pick up a copy today.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, may the Force be with you.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
So thanks to the writing tandem of Kirby Howell for that great interview about Star Wars writing and books and all that kind of cool stuff. And check out their book. It's really good stuff.
Great. I look forward to reading it myself. Hey, Jason. So last week in the show, when I edited it all together, I had left in a little mistake. Do you remember what that mistake was?
It was a little Irish nugget, a little gleam of gold in there, right?
Yeah, kind of. We've mentioned before on the show that we want to have correspondents come on once a week and give a little report about a certain area of fandom. We were hoping for the first show to have Mr. Frank O'Sullivan from Dublin, Ireland, come on and tell us about the filming that was going on in Ireland that week for Episode 7. However, schedules and time zone differences, we couldn't work it all out. I mentioned him in the show, but then it never came to be. So, cut to this week. I finally get the chance to sit down with Frank and have a little discussion about Episode 7 in Ireland. Well, I have bad news, Jason.
What?
My recording of that conversation did not come out properly. I was trying some new software, and I wasn't at home, so I was on my phone recording, and it didn't work out, so I don't have that conversation with Frank. This is in no means a reflection on Frank. This is totally my fault. Frank has been awesome. He was a guest on the show previously when I was doing this by myself. He seems like the show's first fan in a way, because he's always there on Facebook giving us a like.
Yeah. He's liking stuff and
he's
occasionally comments.
Yeah, he's great. He sends me email. He's a great guy. So I feel really bad that I don't have his conversation. So what I'm going to try and do, if you don't mind, I'm going to just see if I can paraphrase and remember what Frank had to tell me about Episode 7 and the filming going on in Ireland. Do you mind if I try this?
In an Irish accent?
No.
No, you don't have to do it.
Okay. All right.
I'm excited to hear about this. This is good because this is some inside information from somebody who knows about the location.
Yeah.
So it might be secondhand information, but I trust your skills and recollection. So here we go.
So if you look at the map of Ireland, off to the southwest corner, off of one of the 4 peninsulas, there is a little island called Skellig Michael, and no one lives there currently. It's a protected site. There are puffins, I believe, are the type of bird that nests there. It used to be, in the 14th century, the site of a Christian monastery. There were monks who went out there and built a church and a place to live and just contemplated life on this little island off the coast of Ireland. It's about 8 to 12 miles off the shore, so it's not like right close to Ireland, but you gotta take a ferry to get out there. Anyway, the island currently is nothing goes on there other than the birds and tourists. People come out each day. There are ferries every day that go out. People see the monastery, and then they leave at the end of the day. No one lives there. No one camps overnight. Well, episode 7 has come along and said, hey, this monastery looks amazing. And I'll put some photos, if you haven't seen them already, I'll put some photos on the website. There's these huts. They look like igloos made of stone. Little domed structures. Very unique, very otherworldly. It's nothing I've ever seen anywhere else in the world. So it does give a very Star Wars feel. To me, it reminded me of the Lars homestead on Tatooine. Think of that little dome coming out of the ground, and these huts are about that same size, but they're made of stone. Anyway, go back to episode 7. They have pretty much hired the island for a week, and the week has ended now. Mark Hamill was confirmed to be there. Daisy Ridley, the new actress, was confirmed to be there, and they shot for about a week. Rumor has it it's a small scene, but it's an important scene, so we'll speculate that on just a moment. What Frank told me that I didn't know, that I didn't pick up in any reports I had read in the papers, was that episode 7, to protect themselves, even hired the Irish Navy to cordon off the island. So no one could get close with a helicopter. No one could drive their boats up and with long-range camera lenses start taking pictures. So that's impressive when a film crew can come in and say, you know what, we need naval protection because this is so important. We want to keep it protected. As I said before, there are ferries that go out each and every day, but these people were out of work for a week, so they were being paid approximately £1,000 per day, which was normally more than they make. So the rumor is they're being paid because they're not able to work, but also they're being paid a little hush money to keep things, not talk to the press about what they've seen. That's, I think, pretty interesting as well. So that was the report that Frank told me about the island. Then we started speculating how this interesting location could fit into Star Wars. My speculation, if I may, was, as I mentioned, these domed huts looked to me like the Lars homestead. So I was thinking, okay, this is where Luke's living now. Just in my mind, like, oh, that's a Skywalker house. So
yep.
That's
I just turned on the Wikipedia page, and if they were brown, they would look like a Tatooine residence.
So in my mind, my speculation is this is where Luke is living. This is where they find Luke. Frank was thinking more like this would be a great hiding place for some kind of MacGuffin. Like whatever. If you don't know the term MacGuffin, it's like the thing that gets the story rolling. The Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well, all the indie movies had a MacGuffin. Yeah. You had the stones from Temple of Doom and the Holy Grail. Yeah. The Maltese
Falcon from that film. So he was thinking this would be a great hiding place or finding place for some kind of MacGuffin. So what do you think, Jason? What you've seen the pictures, you've seen the reports. What do you think could be going on there?
I'm in agreement. I think the structures, the dome structures made out of kind of a gray stone, look very reminiscent of the Tatooine home, Lars homestead, and the dome type architecture you had on on Tatooine. There's also a really interesting shot on Wikipedia of actual island itself, and it's very reminiscent of there was a movie that just came out, Noah. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but there was a kind of a large mountain in that movie, and very beautiful, green, lush, and it's almost kind of like a sanctuary or a place that somebody might be hiding out. It looks kind of like maybe the new Dagobah, where maybe Luke would gonna get away from everybody, where he's been hiding out all these 30 years. That could definitely be a cool that could definitely be a cool aspect to the story. The fact that it was a monastery, and Jedi are kind of monastic in a sense. It could be maybe where the new Jedi are going to train. They're going to train. They're not going to be in the city of Coruscant. They're going to be far away because maybe they're still kind of hunted or something like that. So I don't know. It's and it's beautiful looking stuff, and especially if they have helicopters or any type of sweeping panoramic shots of this area, it's going to be just kind of. It feels to me very obviously Braveheart, those Far and Away, those type of movies that had some Irish scenes from Ireland in them. But then of course you can always add CGI to it as well. Maybe there's some other structures there that they're going to add in later digitally. But I don't know. It's definitely interesting that they're going to all these real locations, and I'm loving that. They've been to Abu Dhabi, and they've been to this place, and then there was somewhere outside of England that they went.
Yes.
Do you remember what that was?
Puzzlewood Forest is called. Parts of Lord of the Rings was filmed there. Doctor Who films there a lot. It's a very interesting forest where trees that are knotted and gnarled, and it looks like a scary dark forest, but also can look like a playful light like fairyland, if you will, depending on how it's filmed. So yeah, some interesting things are coming our way visually, I'm sure.
And I'm so glad they're using legitimate, authentic, real tactile environments, because I was thinking back to episode 3, and except for some of the volcanic eruption stuff that they shot, that they implemented and matted into some of the Mustafar scenes, there was nothing real in that movie.
Yeah,
there was no real environment at all. Even the shot at the end when they're delivering the Luke to the Lars family there, it was all on a green screen stage, and they just they had some great compositing, but I don't know. There's something about being there, and I don't know. I'm so glad they're not going the digital route in this film, and it makes me excited, because plus for the fact of being a Star Wars fan is, if I'm ever in Ireland one day, and I'm going to go to this place because it was in a Star Wars movie, and it's neat to be able to, for those guys who have been to the Lars homestead and all the places in Tunisia, it's really cool to be able to go to. We've got a couple of guests coming up. I'm not going to say who they are in case anything falls through, but these are people that have been to Tunisia and seen these particular locations that they shot in. There's another guest we have coming up who was going to be on the show, but he's going to be up at in the Redwood Forest in Northern California, checking out the location shots for Return of the Jedi. The fact you can go to these places is really cool.
Right. There was a quote this week from everyone's favorite Wookiee. Peter Mayhew had a quote this week in the press that he was very excited that there's so little digital work being done in this film. Very, very practical, he was saying. I'm sure there will be. I mean, everything's got to be matted together, probably digitally, because they're not going to do it the old-fashioned way, on film. But the fact that the backgrounds are all going to be real and tactile and the sets are real, that I think is going to be awesome. So anyway, I want to once again say thank you to Frank O'Sullivan and apologize to Frank. Frank, thank you so much for all your time and patience, and I'm sorry this didn't work out. But if I can find a way to ship you some nice American ales, I will. Frank is a big fan of American beer, which is weird because as an American, like we often.
I thought they hated it over there. Yeah. I thought they hated what we had.
Oh, yeah. No, he likes the microbrews and and some of the craft beer from the U.S. So if I can figure out how to send them a 6-pack, I will. So that's it for this week for our correspondent. And please remember, you too can be a correspondent. We're looking for more people to come on and give their little reports about any particular section of Star Wars fandom. Just send us an email at theexpandedfandomverse@gmail.com or visit our site, theexpandedfandomverse.com.
And now it's time for Jason's Jawa giveaway.
Utinni!
All right, Star Wars fans, you still have a few days to post on our Facebook page, and if you do, you will be registered for a great prize we're giving away. It's our first Jason's Jawa giveaway, and it is a cool Celebration 3 Darth Vader from Celebration 3, obviously, and it's a talking Darth Vader. So it's a 3 3/4 inch action figure. It comes with a base, and you push the buttons and it talks. It's really cool. We have a video of it on our Facebook page and also on our main webpage. And so all you have to do to be registered to win this is post something on our Facebook page or respond in comments to something that we posted on our Facebook page. And if you do that between now and the end of the day on August 15th, we'll put your name in a Stormtrooper helmet and we'll pull out and see who wins the prize, and you don't have to pay for the prize at all. We'll ship it to you free. So it's just a way for us to kind of give back to our new fans and for us to kind of get new people to come in and listen to the show, because we think it's a really good show. We try, at least.
Yeah, I appreciate you passing this action figure on to our fans. Jason, hey, am I eligible to win? Can I get it?
No, unfortunately, you, me, and the correspondents in the show and our families. So sorry, your kids can't win either. Are not eligible to win. All the details are available on our website, so check them out. And so talk to us, send us a message, and be registered.
Great. I look forward to giving that figure away as part of Jason's Jawa giveaway. So that wraps up episode 2 of the Expanded Fandomverse podcast. The Expanded Fandomverse podcast, the only Star Wars podcast about you, the Star Wars fan.
Someday I want to be able to say that.
Okay. You want to do it now? Go for it now.
No.
Okay.
No, we'll just wait.
Next week, I promise.
All right.
All right.
Like that.
It's fun to say.
It's not bad.
And I hope it's fun to hear, as corny as it is. I hope people aren't annoyed by it. But
I have to work on my corn a little bit.
Yes. But, hey, what do you think? Is it too corny? Is it too silly when I do that? Let us know. We want some feedback. As we've been saying, yes, we have a Facebook page. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, email. Yeah, we still do email. I know it's old-fashioned, but we do it. theexpandedfandomverse@gmail.com. Or you can even leave a comment to any of our posts on our site, theexpandedfandomverse.com. Well,
hey, Tim, tell them where we are now, too.
Oh, yeah.
We forgot to talk about it.
Big news, folks. It's finally happened. I've been trying to do this for months, but I finally did it. We are now on iTunes.
Bum, 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 bum. Sorry, I think Apple's the evil empire, but yeah, go ahead.
There we go. We are on iTunes, the iTunes podcast store. You can search for us for free. We don't cost you a dime. Leave us some feedback there. Yes, we would appreciate some comments there. Positive comments, the better, The more positive, the more better. I'm good at English. So
more gooder. We want more gooder comments.
Yes. The more gooder, the more better. So iTunes, check us out there. There's links to iTunes now on our website as well. And so that's about it. Jason, thank you for coming back. Thank you again to Jess Alexander and Dana Melton. So Jason, that's it. Anything else before we go? Did you learn anything this week?
Well, I learned that I need to start working on a fan film right away so that I can direct episode 13. I learned that Henry Cavill looks to be an awesome Jedi. He should quit his day job as Superman and join the Jedi Order. be in episode 8 or 9. And then I also learned that Jaina Solo is a kick-ass, badass character, and I need to read more Expanded Universe.
Well, great. Thank you. Well, that wraps up this week. Thank you. I keep saying thank you way too much, so I'm just going to stop talking now. So remember, we'll be back next week with our 3rd episode. We hope to have you around for that. And remember,
don't be a fandom menace.
The expanded Fandomverse will be with you, always.